rising cost of living, subsequent rising cost of rams has given cause for another look at Nigeria's agriculture sector with particular focus on the struggling livestock subsector. Let's take a look at those numbers. They actually do not make for a good read. When you look at agriculture as a whole, from the first quarter of 2023 up until the fourth quarter of 2023, look at that. So the sector full year, 1.13%. First quarter of 2024, that's the top row on your screen, top right, 0.18%. Crop production, 1.7. Again, we're looking at full year, first quarter of 2024. Look at livestock. First quarter of 2023, a massive contraction of minus 30.57%. Q2 2023, minus 2.3%. Q4 of 2023, minus 2.09%. And then in the full year 2024, we can pretty much say that this sector is in recession, minus 8.61%. And then in the first quarter of 2024, the livestock subsector contracted by 23.29%. It's almost the same conversation with fishing. If you go all the way to the bottom there, fishing also pretty much in recession. I mean, the agriculture sector, lots of work to be done. Here's a quote from an Eid celebrant in Kano that was speaking to the BBC. He said, "I have slaughtered a ram every year starting from 1976, but this year, that's 2024, I just can't. In years gone by, I could afford at least one ram, but things have never been tighter." Let's discuss with our guests. We have with us in the studio Dr. Frank Udeh. He's the CEO of Mastervet Services Nigeria Limited. Dr. Frank, thank you so much for joining us. Happy Eid, happy holidays.
Thank you for having me.
So when you look at numbers like that, the economic figures for that subsector, livestock, fishery and so on, particularly livestock for you, what's your takeaway?
Thank you again for having me, and Baraka de Salah to our Muslim brothers. Sorry that it's a bit of a bleak celebration for them, considering the cost of, livestock right now. Now, what I will really say is that, looking at the figures, this is the time to call for a state of emergency in the agri sector. And this, I mean, not just lip service.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm happy I'm seeing Southwest governors waking up to the situation. You could see with Lagos State, for example, crying out to say, look, our agri areas are being encroached upon.
Yep.
And, and there's also the part of food security. So right now you'll find out that rams, for example, or agricultural products are so expensive because of the restiveness, right, the security situation in the country. There's energy cost attributed to that. Most of farms are not located in cities. Farms are located in rural areas. And in such cases, sometimes we see the figures on the filling station, the billboards, and say 1,300, 1,400 for diesel. This doesn't translate to the rural areas. I can imagine sometimes how does diesel get from here to even those resting places in the north.
Yeah.
Now, so this obviously will lead to increase in cost. And of course, most of the activities in the agri sector is out of, energy use. You have to run generators. We don't have energy given grid going to the rural areas that much. So these are contributory factors to what you're seeing. And that's why I said there is need for us to really call for a state of emergency in the agri sector.
Fair enough. Inflation, we looked at inflation figures over the weekend that came out. And as far as where we are now, 33.95, food inflation is over 40%. You had that quote from the gentleman in Kano State saying he's been buying rams since 1976 and he's not able to make any purchases further. Where does the feed for the animals? Because I know there's been a lot of discussion around the nutrition and what it costs for them. Can you speak to that cost metric for feeding these animals and how this contributes to that?
Now, let me go back, because sometimes it's good to have the background of the value chain of how these things work. Now, we don't operate in true intensive systems of production. You have herders who freely graze. They take the animals, they walk through them, through the villages and through, the bushes. Right now, insecurity has affected that. Now, you don't have them having access, to even move the animals because of the insurgents, and this has this has affected the fact that because they couldn't grow these animals, some of them had to go out to the neighboring countries to have them imported. And you know what the inflation rates, you know what the exchange rates are. And this has actually, come down to the cost of your ram. Now, secondly, you have to look at the path of energy. Like we say, these rams don't leave Kano, don't leave Jigawa, don't leave Sokoto on water in the vehicles. They run on diesel, they run on petrol. And all this cost translates to what you're having right now. So this, in a nutshell, security and the energy cost has really affected what you see. Now, in terms of nutrition, now, you find out that they would take their animals and graze, right? And they will eat. But right now, you can't even have those animals go out to graze. So what some of them are even doing, they are buying feed stuff from neighboring countries to feed their animals. And this obviously translates to added cost of production.
I want to show you a picture because I understand they even slaughter camels and stuff, and then those are shared. There's a photograph of this. I saw it. Yeah, look at that camel in the middle there. Are we, even the third one at the back is the one in the front that seems to be well fed. Are we even getting value for money? Because it's the same issue with the cows where you see some of them extremely skinny. Are we even getting value for money in terms of how these animals their upkeep?
Well, your guess is as good as mine sometimes. The truth of the matter is that you could see that is a purely malnourished animal.
Yeah.
Now, this stems from the fact that this animal cannot get food to eat.
Yeah.
In the first place, camels are not even what we normally would eat.
Right.
Yes, it's meat production, but in Nigeria, it's mostly the cattle, rams, goats. But because of the cost of, I heard recently that you could get a good cow for close to 2 million.
That is, you could buy a car with that amount of money, a used car.
So in furtherance to that, some people have gone to say, okay, since we can't afford cattle anymore, let's go back to bringing in camels.
Yeah.
In a way to cushion up the effect of the cost of what you're seeing in the market.
Yeah.
So, but like I said, these camels don't graze in the city. They graze in the rural areas. And insurgents have taken over the forest.
Yeah.
Where do they graze? Certainly you will have this come into play.
Now, tell me about Mastervet. You're a veterinarian.
Yes.
Right. So this is a sector that I haven't really looked at much, but the cost of taking care of animals and their health care, is that, obviously, has that risen? Can you tell me about what your experience has been?
Certainly.
Yeah.
First, as a vet, I'm trained to have passion, to have love for my animals.
Yeah.
Companionship is part of it. You can't see an animal dying. It's part of the practice. You can't see an animal dying and you're talking of money first. You have to treat.
Right.
Now, again, we are humans, first of all.
Of course.
Primarily. And we also run in this environment. We run in this society. We pay fees. We pay for licenses. And some of these drugs that we use are not majorly produced in Nigeria.
Right.
They are imported. And of course, you know what the foreign exchange thing is right now. You could get drugs for as little as 1,000 naira before. Some drugs that you get for 1,000 are now 6,000, 7,000. And of course, that translates to our services. So it's what affects the everyday Nigerian is also affecting us.
Yeah.
So certainly this has brought increase in our service delivery.
Now, so based on the numbers maybe we should put those GDP numbers up again, because you saw crop production, it's just treading water, right? Livestock, fisheries, those are just down. Would you advise anyone that's watching now that says they want to get into the business of agriculture and they either want to go into crop production or livestock and so on, what would your advice be? What would your advice be as to which sector to go in?
First of all, I would say, there's this proverbial saying that where you find problems are the areas you find opportunities.
Yeah.
Right now, you would see that, yes, the system now makes it look like a bleak area to go into.
Yeah.
But, if you look back at Maslow's law, you know, of a hierarchy of needs. Food is the #1 priority for every human.
Yeah.
So that translates to the fact that you might decide to wear one shirt for 10 years, you might decide to wear one trouser for 4 years, but you must, when you wake up in the day, you must have something to eat. Now, so that tells you, don't forget the fact that agriculture too goes to food security.
Yeah.
Now, we are looking at restiveness coming from others, but we don't want a situation where people go to the markets and they can't get food to buy.
Right.
So, but let's leave that. That's not the concern. Right now, what I see is that there's need for us as a nation to really come together and deal with these concerns that exist.
Yeah.
You know.
Okay. Now here's the thing. You mentioned the need for a state of emergency to be declared. The president did declare a state of food insecurity. I think it was June or it was July of last year.
Yes.
There has been talks around releasing strategic grains into. Do you think that will alleviate any of the issues that I guess are being?
Yes, if it goes to the right channel.
Yeah.
Now we've had situations where government will, in its own magnanimity, or let's put it in a way that they're trying to create security, right?
Yeah.
Now, what we have seen in the past is that who takes these grains from the reserve?
Yeah.
You find out that these grains are released from the reserve, they go back to the market and are sold at even more exorbitant prices.
Yeah.
So how does this address? So, for example, I say in the livestock sector, I mean, if I was going to release grains, for example, I would call the stakeholders in the feed mills and I'll say, look, your cost of production, soya, corn or maize, groundnut cake, I'll give you those things and you use it. The cost of feed right now in the poultry sector is between 14 and 20,000 naira for a 25 kg bag of feed.
And how long would that last? That is,
I mean,
incredibly high.
I mean, that's incredibly high.
Wow.
Now, so, but if government releases those raw materials and say, okay, look, feed millers, you take this, there is an immediate crash because there's an immediate trajectory to the drop in cost of doing business in the poultry sector, for example.
Yeah.
You know, and that translates to affordability.
Is there any way that technology can improve? Well, you see, when I talk technology, usually it's for crops, though. Is there any way that it can improve things in livestock? I mean, anywhere at all?
Certainly, but you know, sometimes when we try to proffer solutions, we look at what exists. You know,
what's on ground.
What's on ground. For example, you are bringing in technology. I mean, there's a lot you can do. We're talking of ranching, for example.
Yeah.
For me, that's a bit of technology. You are trying to say, don't just graze.
Right.
I don't graze. Come together.
Right.
Let's provide these amenities for you,
Yeah.
and you know, and see that you know you get better returns in the business that you do. So that is the trajectory that we look at. But again, you go back to energy.
Look, I'm happy you keep bringing up energy. This is essential to every sector in this country.
You know,
You need electricity. You need affordable energy.
I have a client that powers. You know, in the poultry sector, you have people who are in the what do you call it, in hatching. In the hatching business,
Yeah.
the chicks
and so on. Yeah, right.
Now, I have a client that spends close to 50 million naira monthly.
What? And they're still in business?
There you go.
That is
now
mind-boggling.
A broiler chick in May sold for close to 1,000 naira.
Yeah, that is.
I mean, so how do you play in this space? How do you? I mean, with all these attendant issues. It makes it look a bit bleak, and that's why you're seeing the figures going red, because farms are shutting down. You know, they can't cope anymore. You know, you produce your broiler, and you go to the market, the purchasing power of the people is down. They can't buy, and you take it back, and immediately you take your broilers back to your farm, your cost still continues to run.
Right.
And over time, like you know, your funds run out, and what happens? You have to shut down.
Yeah. And wow, it's something else. I do need to. I want to come back to your profession again, the veterinary profession. I don't think enough emphasis is placed on it. You attended, and I hope we have the image here, the Nigerian Veterinary Medical Association annual convention. Yes. It was in Lagos there it is. It was in Lagos in November of last year. Yes. Look, I really want a focus, a spotlight on the veterinary profession. What was discussed? What was that? What was the experience like? What did they talk about at this?
Normally we have this convention, which is the convergence of private and public veterinarians who come under one umbrella to look at issues that are germane to the livestock space. I will take out three paramount extracts from that with the need, even though I know in agriculture you have a Siamese twins, crop production and animal production. But we believe that the time has come to separate them and have a livestock ministry, you know, where you can have these issues that concern us be dealt with decisively.
The GDP numbers show it.
You know. So that is one. Secondly, of course, you have the issue of antimicrobial resistance all over the place.
That was a technical. Is that a disease or what's that?
No, you have a situation where out of the consumption of animal products, these animals are treated, and what you have is you are treated with drugs. And those drugs are meant to actually, before you sell those products, actually get out of the system.
Gotcha.
But in most cases, what we've discovered is that not insurgency, but exigencies of the time make that sometimes you trade your produce even while drugs are still in the system of the animal. And in most cases, when you now go to the hospital to actually seek for treatment, administration of antibiotics or medications that will actually treat those diseases will not happen, because the microorganisms to causing the problem have already, you know, because you've released small doses from food, from animal consumption, the organisms no longer respond to the treatment that
so that creates another issue.
That creates another issue. So that is very critical.
Okay. You're also into agribusiness. Yes. Does it make sense that if you're a vet, it would make sense as something else to bring in more income, or because of your expertise to also be in agribusiness as well as being a veterinarian?
Well, that's a good one. The point is, you see, like I said, issues that affect every other human in the populace affects the vet because it's first a human being. Now, the truth of the matter is that, you know, you've had situations where there are rural to urban migration. Now, the vets are normally seen in rural areas because that's where you have livestock. But the situations in those rural areas has also affected vets moving. And so we looked at it that this is our core, this is our business. Let's go into it and show the people how it should be done. And that's why I commend the president for appointing the Minister for State, who is himself a vet. And we can see some of the
round peg in a round hole.
That's it. So we believe that with time, some of these things will become a thing of the past. Because for you to solve problems, you have to be a practitioner. You have to be somebody who has, you know, the needs and grits to deal with those issues.
I'm very curious. As a vet, I'm a dog lover. I'm thinking of getting a dog myself, but I'm working on that later on. So the thing is, who are most of your clients? Do you have private people who bring their pets for treatment, or is it mostly, you know, live farms that are your livestock that are your main clients? What's the mix of clients for a vet in Nigeria today?
Right now, like I said, because of rural to urban migration, you've had situations where vets are moving to the cities. And obviously in the city, what are the prevalent animals that you would see? You are not going to have camels walking to your clinic. If, for example, you have a clinic in Ikoyi, you're not going to have a camel walk in. You're not going to have, so certainly you have your dogs and cats and birds coming, So yes, in the cities, that's what you have now. And obviously, that is what is prevalent. But we actually see you know, with the trend of things going right now, where we expect that if these measures are taken that will change things, of course, you should have vets more in the livestock sector than in the small animal sector.
There's been a lot of talk around the lack of doctors. This is on the human side now.
Yes.
And the doctors are leaving, they're going overseas. But it's everywhere. In the UK, there's a big election coming up. I mentioned grocery inflation coming down in the UK and whether that will help the ruling party Tories there. What's this? Do we have what's the ratio like for vets to, I guess, the patients? Are we facing the same issue? Do you have enough interest in the veterinary industry?
Certainly. Right now, from the last stats I saw, you have about 8,000 vets. Yes.
That's even less than the doctors. The doctors was 24,000 or so practicing.
And you have about 3,002 practicing vets.
Wow.
Now, these 3,002, of course, these are guys that are in the field who are doing, you know, some of them have retired.
Yeah.
Some other are in the agencies, the drug, you know, pharmaceuticals, the airports.
Yeah.
You know, you have them all around.
Yeah.
Now, what we've seen is that even at the state level, you have states that record in the civil service less than 8 vets.
Wow. That is a low number.
So it's a big concern.
Yeah.
Certainly we have that crisis in our own side. And that's why the new administration under the leadership of the Vet Council of Nigeria, under the leadership of AIG, Aisha Bandu, is doing so much to see that more numbers you know, come out of medical school and help to cushion these effects. Is it a lucrative profession? Can it be? Certainly. You can make a good living. Oh, yeah, sure, sure. So, Dr. Udeh, I really appreciate it. Just one more. I guess you've already touched on this. But ultimately, if we go back to the livestock matter, what do we need to do to improve? Is it the energy matter? What needs to be done, just to summarize? Now, like I said, you have a long term, you have a medium term and immediate way to look at this. For example, like I was discussing with one of the farm owners I consult for, he was like, okay, if I spend 50 million and you take National Grid to my farm and you subsidize energy for me, and rather than spend 50 million, I spend 5 million, I spend 4 million, that immediately translates to gain. Right. You get? Yeah. Now, so also this issue of raw materials, there's need for government to really subsidize. This is the area they need to look at subsidy. Right. But with subsidy, we are saying it's not to farmers, quote and unquote. You know what I mean? We don't want situations where the real farmers don't get this subvention to do things. You see people who take these funds, they take it and they do something else with it. So yes, that would help. You know, so basically the issue of in the north, like you say, is security has to be arrested. That has to be done. That has to be nipped in the bud immediately, like yesterday. So that, you know, you can see the figures for quarter 2023 ending. Really red, and that's where we're seeing the effect. You know, I was in the buzz in social media. See my friend and classmate, African farmer Mortgagee, who everybody say, oh, he mentioned that tomatoes is going to go off the roof. I mean, sometimes this is an rocket science. The figures show it. You know, if at 2023, you are seeing those figures, it tells you, because this is something that deals with seasons. You have the rainy and dry season. And if you don't do farming in a particular season, supply drops. Supply drops. So, Dr. Frank Udeh, the CEO of Mastervet Services Nigeria Limited, thank you for a very enlightening discussion on your profession, the veterinary profession. I hope all the animal lovers like myself enjoyed it. And also about at a macro level, government level, improving things so that our livestock sector can get a whole lot better. Thank you so much and happy Eid. Thanks for joining us. My pleasure.